Hi, and welcome to True Crime Obsessed Mum. I am your True Crime Obsessed Mum, Amy, and today I want to tell you about the bathtub murder of Michele Summers. Now, in this video, I will call Michele by her maiden name Summers, not her married name. As I go through, it will become very clear as to why I've decided to do that. So, let's begin. April 11th, 2007, Michele Summers is found in her bathtub, submerged underwater, unconscious, by her husband Martin Macneil. Her cause of death is said to be natural through cardiovascular disease. However, her daughters Alexis and Rebecca think that their dad is to blame for their mum's death. Now, Michele was born in January 1957 in Concord, California. She's a straight-A student. She was super popular and absolutely gorgeous. I have posted pictures on both my Instagram and my Facebook page, so go and check that out. She was homecoming queen and she was also crowned Miss Concord as well because she is beautiful. Now, Michele's faith, which was the Mormon faith, was very important to her. And she actually met Martin through the Mormon church. And they quickly became infatuated with each other and fell in love. And they eloped to get married. Now, in the 70s, that was more common than it is now. And although their family was a bit like, okay, they were happy and they were supportive of the couple. Now, Michele was the type of woman who just wanted to settle down. She wanted to be a wife, and more than anything, she wanted to become a mother. In their first 5 years of marriage, they had 4 children. That was Rebecca, Vanessa, Alexis, and Damien. They then went on to adopt a further 4 children from Ukraine. Giselle, Sabrina, Ellie, and Ada. Martin became a doctor and a non-practicing lawyer, and Michele, she did exactly what she wanted to do. She was a stay-at-home wife and a mother. Now, her daughter said that Michele was a fantastic mother. She was loving, she was kind, she was their best friend, and she was just made to be a mother. Now, Martin, people who knew Martin said that he was arrogant, he was obnoxious. He needed everybody to know that he was both a doctor and a lawyer. And he took over the room, and it was always all about him. Like, he'd always just talk about himself. However, that is how he was to the outside world. And his daughters always had to sort of defend him from people in the outside world. But when it came to being inside with his family, Martin was a total opposite. He was actually a really good dad, and he was super involved in his kids' life. So, they had a good family life until Martin turned 50. When Martin turned 50, he just totally changed. He became super obsessed with the way he looked. He was going on tanning beds, he was going to the gym, he was having surgeries, and it's just strange for somebody to suddenly do all those things at the age of 50 for just no apparent reason, apart from the fact they woke up one day and thought, let's do this. He was so obsessed with it. Even when it was said that he'd be having a conversation with him, and suddenly, out of nowhere, he'd be on the floor doing press-ups. And he was spending a lot of time out of the house. Now, this sudden change in personality and this time he was spending out of the house, obviously it made Michele a bit like, okay, what's going on? And Michele started to become suspicious that Martin was having an affair. Now, at this time, their 4 biological kids didn't live at home. Rebecca, Vanessa, and Damien lived in state but in their own homes. And Alexis was out of state at medical school. But Michele confided in Alexis her fears that her father was having an affair, and Alexis managed to get hold of Martin's phone records, which said there was a certain number that Martin was always phoning day and night, and this number belonged to a gypsy, Gillian Willis. Now, Martin met Gypsy online in 2005, so this was 2 years before Michele's death, and they had an instant connection, Gypsy said. Although Martin told her that he was married and his wife was amazing and he loved her and he was never going to leave her, Gypsy was fine with that. She didn't care. She didn't want anything serious. She was just out for a bit of fun, and that's what they had. Although Martin did pay for her rent and all of her bills as well. Michele confronted Martin about this affair that she reckoned he was having, and of course he totally denied it and said that she was delusional and just stupid for thinking that he was having an affair. But then actually went on to say that if he was, it would be all Michele's fault, because she was getting old and she looked it, and she was putting on weight, and she wasn't looking after herself like he was trying to look after himself, and actually she could do having a bit of surgery. This is when Martin suggests a facelift, and although this isn't anything that Michele has ever said that she wanted or ever had any interest in, she agrees, and I personally think it's just because she's sure that Martin's having an affair, and Martin has said these things to her, and you would think, well, if I have a facelift, maybe he'd stop seeing the other woman and we can get on with our marriage. So that's why I think she sort of went along with it. Martin didn't wait around. He booked an appointment with the surgeon to speak about this facelift, like within days of mentioning it. So when they went to see the surgeon, Michele was very concerned. I'm very sorry about my creaky chair. If you can hear that, I'll try not to move around too much. Michele had some concerns about the risks involved in surgery and the downtime she would have, and who would look after her and her younger adopted kids that she had to look after at home if she was out of it for a length of time after the surgery. But the surgeon seemed to put these doubts at rest for a while anyway. So the next thing they had to do is speak to Michele's physician to make sure that she was actually healthy and able to have this surgery, because apparently facelifts are a big thing. I don't really know too much about it, but apparently it's a big thing. So they went to Michele's physician to have like an all-over health check. Now, he was concerned about Michele's blood pressure and said it was slightly high, and he would recommend that they delay the surgery just for a bit so they could give Michele some medication and she could get her blood pressure down. Martin was not pleased, and he was not having any of this, and decided to just ignore the physician's advice. Now, they did an ECG on Michele, and it come back that her heart was fine, and other than this slightly raised blood pressure, Michele was perfectly healthy and able to have this operation. So next thing they had to do is go back to the surgeon to go through the plan of exactly what they were going to do. So I'm just going to look at my notes for the medication, because there's a list of medication that the surgeon would normally prescribe after a facelift. So he would typically prescribe a pain relief, which is Lortab, an antibiotic cephalexin, I might not be saying it quite right, but a sleeping medication, Ambien, and an anti-inflammatory, which is a middle dose pack, and an eye ointment too, which is erythromycin. Occasionally he would prescribe an anti-sickness if the patient was complaining of feeling a bit sick, and this was Phenergan. Now, when they went to the final appointment with the surgeon, Martin came with his own list of medication that he wanted Michele to have on top of what the surgeon would typically prescribe. And the list that Martin suggested was an additional stronger pain relief called oxycodone, also known as Percocet, a Lortab but in a liquid form, more than the typical amount of Phenergan, and he also requested it in suppository form as well. And the last thing he requested was an anti-anxiety drug, Valium. Now, because Martin was a doctor, the surgeon just sort of agreed, thinking that he's a doctor, he's going to know. But the surgeon did say that he wouldn't normally prescribe all of that medication for a facelift, and he shouldn't be giving the medication at the same time or all at once. It's really, really important that it's spread out and not taken all at the same time. Michele said that she didn't really like taking medication, so she would be trying to limit the amount that she was going to take anyway. And Martin was like, yeah, I'm a doctor, I know exactly how to medicate and prescribe this stuff, it's going to be fine. And the surgeon just sort of was like, well, you know, he is a doctor, and prescribed it. So now comes the day of the surgery. At this time, Alexis is home on spring break, so she was able to look after her mum. So Alexis went to the hospital with Michele and Martin. On the way, Michele sort of has like second thoughts, a bit like cold feet, and she suggests that actually they do delay it, like her physician said, and you know, she gets her blood pressure under control and then has the operation. Martin snaps and gets angry and actually shouts that if she doesn't have it now, she's not going to have it at all. And even though Michele didn't want it in the first place, she sort of just, fine, I'll have it then. Which, you know, but I suppose she wants to keep her man. So, you know, us women will do crazy things to keep men, won't we? So she has the operation. Now, she actually has a multiple of different sort of lifts and things done to her face, which normally would be done over a course of a few operations. But Martin's like, no, let's get it all done in one go. And again, because he's a doctor, the surgeon just does what he says and does it all in one go. So poor Michele, she's under the knife for 9 hours having work done to her face. It all goes well, and afterwards she's fine. You know, there's no complications or anything like that. She's blinded while she recovers because she's had all this stuff done to her face. So she can't really see while she recovers. And when she comes around, she's a bit groggy and a bit pain, a bit sicky. So she asks whether she could spend the first night actually in the hospital just to be sure before she goes home. Martin's like, no, we need to go home now. But the surgeon says that normally he does recommend that patients stay at the hospital for the first night. So Martin's like, oh, okay. Next day, Michele goes home and Alexis looks after her. She gives her her medication, she takes her to the toilet, she baths her and washes her hair and does all the things that Michele can't do because she's all swollen, she can't see. She's in pain. Come the evening, however, Martin tells Alexis that she can go, and Alexis goes off. I think she is still in the house, but like in her own room because she's back from spring break. However, I'm not sure, she might be staying elsewhere. I'm not too sure about that. But Martin takes over care of Michele for that evening. The next morning, when Alexis goes to check on her mother, Michele is out of it. She is heavily sedated. She's really hard to wake up, and it's just isn't there at all. And Alexis is like, hang on, what the hell's gone on here? So she asks her mum, like, what has happened? Her mum says that Martin was just forcing medication in her all night long. And at one point, she was even sick because she had so much medication. And she confides in Alexis that she was worried about what Martin was up to and says to her, if anything happens to me, make sure it wasn't your dad. Can you imagine your mum saying that to you about your dad? Now, at the time, Alexis just puts it down to all the medication that her mum's on and just like, medicated ramblings and doesn't really pay too much attention to it, because I suppose you wouldn't, would you? But she is concerned about why her mum is like so out of it. So she does go to her dad and asks him, like, what happened with mum? Why is she so out of it? And Martin turns around and says, well, I give her some medication, but she was sick, so I give her some more. Perhaps I give her too much, but, she'll be fine. And that was it. He didn't really seem that bothered that he may have given his wife too many really strong medication. So Alexis says to him, look, Dad, leave it. Don't give her anything else. I will take care of her from now on. And Alexis does. Right up to the point where she needs to go back to medical school because spring break is over. But by this time, Michele is recovering really, really well. So Alexis feels very confident leaving Michele and going back to school because Michele is doing really well. So Alexis goes back to school, and the day that Michele is found, April the 11th, Alexis speaks to her in the morning, and Michele says she's doing great. In fact, she's even thinking about leaving the house today and going and picking up the younger kids from school, which she hadn't done since the operation. So she was doing really, really well. But later that day, Martin went to an award ceremony, and he was very much like, take a picture of me, take a picture of me. Did you get me in that picture? Let's see if I'm in that picture. Strange, right? And then he goes and picks up the youngest daughter, Ada, from school and goes back home. This is when he finds Michele in the bath, and he freaks out. He asks Ada to go and get some help because he can't get her out of the bath. Now, Michele weighs about 150 pounds. She's not heavy, and Martin's been at the gym working out, but he can't get Michele out of the bath. So he calls 911. Now, his conversations with 911 are really strange. He gives the wrong address. Now, this can just be panicking, not really thinking straight because of what's happening. But they were at this house for years. It wasn't a new house. And he gives them the wrong address. He hangs up the phone 3 times before they actually know where they're supposed to be going to help his wife. And he sounds really angry. Like, he's shouting at the person on the other end of the phone like it's their fault. So Ada goes next door and gets help, and it is their next door neighbour, who is called Christy Daniels, comes over. She sees Michele in the bath and is like, I've got to phone 911. Martin's like, I've already done it. And Michelle's thinking, right, so wait, Christy is thinking, we've got to get her out the bath. But I'm not going to be able to do it on my own. So Christy goes and gets her husband. Now, together, Christy's husband and Martin get Michele out the bath, and they start doing CPR on her. So Christy's husband is doing the chest pumps, and Martin is doing the mouth-to-mouth bit to try and resuscitate her. The ambulance finally arrives and they take over CPR. Now, as soon as the ambulance takes over the CPR, suddenly all this liquid comes out of Michelle's mouth, which wasn't happening when Martin was doing it, which sort of suggests that the CPR wasn't being done correctly. It's very common that people don't do CPR correctly, but Martin's a doctor. So the fact that a doctor isn't doing the CPR correctly is just a whole level of suspicion all on its own. While this is happening, Martin phones Alexis and tells her that her mum's been found underwater in the bath and she needs to get here now. Alexis jumps on the plane back into state, like straight away, to get there as soon as she can. And it's while she's on the plane that what her mum said to her that night comes back. And it just clicks that her dad has done something terrible and she needs to get there as soon as possible. Martin also phones Rachel and tells her, something's happened to your mum, just get home. Mate's like, what? Tell me, what's happened? And Martin's just like, get home. So Rachel comes home too. Now, when Alexis gets there, she's got all this thing going on about, like, what has her dad done to her mum? And Rachel says to her dad, look, where's mum's medication? Sorry, Alexis says to her dad, where's mum's medication? Because she wants to check to make sure, like, that her dad hasn't given her mum too much medication again, and just to, like, put her mind at rest that her mum was just medicated babbling and there isn't anything to it. However, Martin asked his daughter-in-law, so Damien's wife, to flush Michele's medication because it was making him sad looking at it. I know, right? So there's no medication to check to see exactly how much is missing, how much has been given, or anything like that. And as I said at the beginning, the coroner says it was heart disease, cardiovascular failure, and it's natural. And that was that. Now, Martin rushed the funeral. He wanted to get Michele buried, like, as soon as possible. Alexis was told her sister and her mum's family about what her mum said, about the medication being missing, about the fact that her dad had over-medicated her that first night as well. And people are suspicious. Michele's family is suspicious. So Martin bans them from Michele's funeral, saying, look, you're not supporting me, you're trying to accuse me, so you can't come to her funeral. So it is held like days after her death, and nobody's really there apart from Martin and his friends. Like, not many of Michele's friends are allowed to go. Michele's family's not allowed to go. So it's like their kids, Martin, and Martin's friends. Now, during the day, Martin didn't really speak much about Michele. In fact, he speaks a lot about himself as normal, and he just doesn't seem upset or overly bothered that he has just buried his wife, which, again, is just super suspicious. And the one other person that is allowed to go to Michele's funeral is Gypsy. Now, even though they've been texting each other all throughout Michele's funeral, they act as if they have just met, and the funeral is the first time that they've met. Now, both Rachel and Alexis suggest that they can help Martin look after the younger kids, because Martin's still out working and that used to be Michele's job, and they said, no, we can move back home and we can do that. Martin says, no, I don't need you to do that, I'll get a nanny. So he puts an ad out for a nanny, but only one person applies for this position. Can you guess who? Gypsy Gillian Willis, and she moves in to the Macneil house as a nanny, but she does nothing. Now, you may be thinking, but surely Alexis knows who she is at this point. She said her name's Gillian. So Alexis just doesn't put two and two together right now. And it's only when she confronts her dad, like, this nanny isn't, why is this nanny here? She's not cooking, she's not cleaning, she's not looking after the kids, just let me do it. It comes out that the nanny is Gillian. And Alexis and Rachel are like, hang on, we know who Gillian is. We know you were having an affair with her. And now you've moved her into our mum's house. Like, what are you doing? Her dad, Martin, just kicks him out. Like, if you don't like it, there's the door. See you later. So they are no longer at home. They're not allowed in the house because obviously they don't want Gypsy moving in like weeks after their mum has passed away. Which, you know, you can't blame him. Who would want that, right? Now, not long after that, Martin and Gypsy go to see Gypsy's parents. And Martin proposes. This is like 2 weeks after he's buried his wife. He proposes to Gypsy. Now, they have 4 kids at home that are adopted. Giselle is the eldest. And Martin sends Giselle back to Ukraine for what he says is just a visit for a couple of weeks. It's fine. A couple of weeks turns into a couple of months. And Alexis and Rachel are like, why isn't Giselle coming home? And Martin assures her, oh, she's just having a good time out there. She's fine. She'll come back when she wants. But, you know, she's visiting people and she's enjoying herself. She's fine. In the meantime, Gypsy and Martin have used Giselle's social security number to make a whole new identity for Gypsy. So it's got out of some real bad debt that she was in. And they also frauded a marriage certificate to claim that they are now legally married when they're not. But it's okay because Giselle is out the country. So they're getting away with this scot-free. 12 months Giselle is in Ukraine and Gypsy is using her identity to do what the hell she wants. Until Alexis is like, right, I've had enough. I'm going over and I'm going to see Giselle. Because it's been a year now. Like, what is going on? Alexis goes over and sees that Giselle is actually not having a good time. And she's living in squalor. And she doesn't actually want to be over there at all. So Alexis brings Giselle back into the country. Now there's a problem. Now there's 2 people with the same social security number. Exactly. So Martin and Gypsy get done for fraud, identity theft of their adopted daughter, Giselle. Now, Martin gets 4 years in prison and Gypsy does 3. Now, while they're in prison, Alexis and Rachel is still trying to campaign and get people to believe that their dad killed their mum. They're so adamant that this is happening. Everyone was like, no, it's fine, no, blah, blah, blah. Until they get to the detective, who sort of looks at it and thinks, right, so she's died, her affair mistress has just moved in, has now been done for identity theft of their adopted child. Like, let's look into this person and his background. And wow, don't they unleash like a hell of a lot, honestly. So, Martin's already been in prison for fraud. He's 6 months back in the 70s. I believe it's just after him and Michele first got together. He ended up doing 6 months prison time for fraud. Martin never finished high school and he got into medical school on false credentials. He had no right going in medical school and getting his medical qualifications at all. It was all falsified. He was released from numerous jobs for complaints about indecent sexual advances, sexual harassments, even rapes. And yeah, he's just a real bad person. Gypsy isn't Martin's only mistress either. He actually had another mistress called Anna, who will later testify against him in court. So we will be coming to that very soon. So yeah, he's known for sexual harassment, sexual assaults, rapes, fraud, you name it. And he was actually in the military. Right after school, he joined the forces, but he made out he had schizophrenia. So he was released on mental health grounds, and he lived off that disability for 30 years, even though he had no schizophrenia at all. He had that disability money paid to him for 30 long years. So this is all being found out while Martin's in prison for fraud. And now people are starting to think, hang on, there's more to this than meets the eye. So a new coroner is brought in to have a look at Michele's death. And it's deemed that it wasn't cardiovascular, and it's actually put down as unknown. Now, they do a toxicology report, and it turns out that even though Michele was pretty much fully recovered, and she had a conversation saying that she felt great that day and she was actually going to go out and pick her kids up for the first time since the operation, her toxicology report shows that she had all of those medications like in her system. She was fully dosed up on medication. And I said that even if she was in severe pain, she shouldn't have that much medication in her system. So the fact that she was ready to go out and pick her children up, there's no way she should have that much medication in her system. Now, remember me telling you how Martin was a show-off and it was all about him and he liked to brag how clever he was? Well, he did that in prison too. And he started to brag to his inmates in prison how he had got away scot-free with killing his wife. How he had over-medicated his wife and then ran her a bath. And he even said to one inmate that he'd over-medicated his wife, ran her a bath, but she needed a bit of help. And when the inmate's like, what do you mean she needed a bit of help? He says, I had to hold her head underwater for a little bit. Now, this is found out because like they listen to everything, don't they, in prison? And yeah, it's found out. So they have now got, with everything, they've got a case to nail Martin for Michele's death. So Martin's released from prison for 7 weeks until he is charged with Michele's death. He's remanded, he's not allowed out on bail. He had like £1 million bail thing that he couldn't afford, so he stayed in prison. And in his trial, his first mistress, Anna, testifies against him. Now, Anna has something very interesting to say about this nasty Martin bloke. That he must have trusted Anna a lot, and he confided in Anna. He told Anna that he had killed his brother in a bath because he was an embarrassment to the family. He told Anna that he'd also tried to kill his mum, and he'd also told Anna that he had done a numerous amount of mercy killings as a doctor, and also suggested that he could kill Anna's husband so they could be together. For some reason, Anna just kept this to herself until she found out that Martin was being charged with the murder of his wife and thought, actually, we should maybe say something about all these things that he's been telling me about. Christy and Ada also testify as well. Martin claims that Michele was over the bath. So like her head and the top half of her body was in the water, but her legs were on the floor. So like she was humped over. So like she'd passed out and fell and sort of ended up in the bath. However, both Ada and Christy, who was there at the time that she was found, says that actually she was lying fully submerged in the bath with her head under the tap. So that makes no sense at all, right? Now, all the daughters testify about this, and Alexis isn't allowed to say that about her mother's warning because it's like just her word for it. So she isn't allowed to say anything about her mother's warning. All the kids turned up at the trial holding a photo of their mother so Martin could see her face and look into her eyes while they were discussing exactly what he did to her. That is one of the photos that I have posted on my Instagram and my Facebook account, my Facebook page rather. So yeah, check that out. It's really, really heartwarming. Now, throughout this trial, Martin doesn't really show any emotion or any tears, except from when Gypsy comes onto the stand and they're talking about love letters that Gypsy and Martin had sent to each other while in prison. While they're reading out snippets from these love letters, Martin starts to cry. And that's the only time he shows any sort of remorse or any emotion at all. And when it comes to sentencing, the daughters are allowed to come and say something to their dad as like to help them with closure. And Alexis comes on and basically says that her dad's a monster. He isn't anything to do with them. He isn't really their dad. And she wants him to get like as much time as he can. So Martin is found guilty and is sentenced to 15 years to life, meaning he's very unlikely to ever get out at this point. Gypsy's not sentenced to anything. I don't even think she was tried for anything to do with Michele's murder because there's just no evidence that she knew anything about it. Even with all the texts and all the conversations that her and Martin had, there's nothing there to say that they had planned it or Gypsy knew anything about what Martin was doing. However, Gypsy's family say that she was vindictive, nasty piece of work, and she likely wanted Michele dead as much, if not more, as Martin did. But there was just no evidence at the time, so she went free. Now, Martin did appeal his sentence and thankfully lost his appeal. But sadly, well, I suppose it's sadly, in April, it was April the 9th, 2017, which is a couple of days before the 10-year anniversary of Michele's death, Martin was found to have completed suicide in his prison cell. So, yeah, he's gone too now. The kids did go to his funeral, which, you know, was big of them. I don't think I'd be able to do that. They did change Michele's gravestone. There was a bit there saying loving wife to Martin Macneil. They took that off. And Alexis has changed her name to Alexis Summers now. So the fact that they had removed loving wife to Martin Macneil from the gravestone is why I chose to refer to Michele as Michele Summers through this video. Alexis got custody of the younger children as well, and she did medical school and she's now a doctor, Alexis Summers. And yeah, the other kids have all grown up, had kids of themselves and are doing well. So it's a sort of happy ending for them. So yeah, that is the case of the bathtub murder of Michele Summers. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed, found it interesting. I am planning to do a sort of video like this, like once a week on different cases. So if you have a case that you find super interesting and you'd like me to delve into and give you all the gory details of, let me know. Other than that, I will see you guys next week. Bye for now.